Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you very much for coming in and joining us. There's a lot going on at the show, so we are privileged that you're spending a few minutes with us. I'm Rowan. I'm the CEO of the DPP. If you don't know the DPP, we are a provider of insight and intelligence around media and technology, and a network of about 500 media and tech companies across North America and Europe primarily. And I have the privilege of being joined with three fascinating people. We're going to talk about the convergence of enterprise technology, video conferencing, AI, and live production. There's a lot going on in this space. And a lot of it's very real. We really want to kind of get into some of the real world use cases that are going on. But I better let you introduce yourselves. Let's start with you, Andy.
Wonderful, and thank you all for being here today. I'm Andy Carluccio, and I lead our innovation platform at Zoom, so I oversee all pro media and broadcast use cases of Zoom. We focus on vertical areas of specialty on top of the video conferencing technology. So think remote contribution, distribution, being able to bring in somebody from anywhere in the world and have a live conversation with them as part of your show. That's what our team looks at Zoom.
Awesome stuff. Rohit.
Thanks, Rowan. Hey, everyone. My name is Rohit Nagarajan. I'm the CEO of Vizrt. We are the world's leading platform for media, entertainment, sports, and now enterprise. And we're really excited to be here today.
Robin Raskin, the Virtual Events Group. We sort of are everywhere. If you go over to Central Hall, we run the Creator Lab there. We believe that broadcast has changed and NAB has changed because of it. So we have a rather large presence in Central Hall for content creators. And we do this at CES. We do this at IFA Berlin. We do this with the Sports Video Group. So we kind of look at content creators in all sorts of settings.
Good stuff. Okay, so we'll start with video conferencing in a live production workflow. We have the man from Zoom, probably the preeminent video conferencing platform. And look, I think a lot's changed in the last 5 or 6 years, Andy. Like we all sort of went into the pandemic. Most broadcasters had probably never thought of using enterprise video tools, had never thought of using video conferencing. And all of a sudden we've got to do things remotely and people kind of got things up and running in a hurry. But I think it'd be fair to say if we went back 5 years, most people who come to NAB might have thought of the idea of using something like Zoom in a video workflow, in a broadcast workflow as a workaround, as something they sort of had to do in a hurry to get running during the pandemic. And they were probably deeply grateful that they could do that. But what's changed since then? How has that moved on to being a more integral part of the workflow?
I think our answer to that evolves alongside of the way that we see the broadcaster evolving and who we consider to be the broadcaster. So I'll start by just giving you the framework that we use at Zoom to define who that is, and then I'll speak to kind of how we attack that. So we think of a broadcaster. First, we think, TV, kind of a lot of the traditional people you might imagine to be here at NAB, your linear TV providers, right? And that's kind of the top of this pyramid. And then we have a larger segment that's in the middle there, and that's enterprise producers. That's people at these financial services companies, these healthcare companies, people from the professional world who are increasingly producing content inside of their organization with their distributed workforce that has broadcast quality. And then that third segment is the content creator. That's the live streamer, the YouTuber, the person who's bringing in their friend over a Zoom meeting and live streaming out a show about some topic that they're passionate about, right? So we think about all three of those. So as you talk about the past 5 years, as we've kind of gotten into the post-pandemic era, it's been about specific tooling for the broadcaster. So, for example, things like getting dedicated, clean NDI outputs of a Zoom meeting, right? Being compatible with the broadcast formats that the producers are using. That's been a lot of the focus on our side, is making sure that the tooling is natural for the workflow. Because to your point, when everything was a scramble and we're trying to figure out how we're going to get these remote signals into our shows, it was a lot of like, crack open the laptop, dial into a Zoom meeting, screen scrape it, and bring it into the production. But now we have, dedicated SDI, NDI, SRT, all of these high quality individual sources. So we're trying to evolve the platform to support the vertical and grow alongside of the producers across those three categories that we're thinking about.
And that actually involved a pretty big acquisition of your company, right?
That's right. So I was the founder of a company called Liminal. We built production tools off of Zoom's developer platform, and then Zoom acquired us at the end of 2021. So our Zoom ISO, Tiles for Zoom, Zoom OSC, and then all these third-party broadcast integrations we've been doing. That's been a big focus for us especially the past 2 or 3 years. the underlying technology that allows us to do the video transport, we've made it available to third-party developers like Vizrt, and we've actually built in directly into those products. So now the video conferencing is not this separate component that you have to figure out how it's going to interact to bring the remote signals in. It's actually running inside of the switcher or inside of the tool you're already using to produce your event as a native source, just like a webcam would be, just like an on-site camera would be connected to the switcher. Now you can bring in a remote signal. And we think that's important because, you know, at a moment's notice, I was talking to some broadcasters earlier today. They're like, look, when we have a breaking news segment, we got to be able to bring in a person from anywhere in the world who's the best expert in that topic, not just somebody who's close to the insert studio or not just somebody, you know, who's already, you know, on our location, right? So all these needs have been congruent and mirror themselves across those segments.
I think that's a great point, actually. Where there's a great example of where the capability has changed the content, because we are so used to that thing that we can just bring in a great expert from anywhere in the world, as you say. Rohit, you are the CEO of a major broadcast technology company that's been at this show for decades. But actually, you also have a lot of skin in the game of this enterprise world, don't you? Maybe more than people at this show might appreciate.
Absolutely. And the reason for that is where Andy left off, right? Which is we see this convergence of broadcast and enterprise. End of the day, we've got two segments, both of whom are telling a story to an audience, to engage the audience, to give them differentiated experiences. And what we see is the ability to use a software-defined broadcast platform, which in integration with capabilities like Zoom are able to provide enterprises with the same level of capability that you would see as a linear TV viewer, except for audiences which are more applicable to an enterprise. And they could be employees, they could be partners, they could be customers. And end of the day, just like you've got linear TV fighting for eyeballs of viewership, the same is true in enterprise. Every executive is in an enterprise is fighting for the viewership and the attention span of an employee, a partner, or a customer. So why would you not apply the decades of hard-learned experience of trying to engage those viewers in linear, in an enterprise world? And that's where we are absolutely focused on now.
I love that. The attention economy even applies within big corporates. And when we're talking about, Andy talked about being able to integrate their transport protocol and their technology into products that you have. I'm interested whether that demand comes purely from that enterprise clientele, whether your broadcast customers are wanting that. Like, what is the interplay between those different kind of customer bases for you?
That's a great question. And the answer is, as we've seen broadcasters just ask for more simplified workflows, this kind of integration with Zoom is something they're yearning for, and they've been very complimentary about. I think the best reaction I got from one customer when we displayed this integration is, the reaction was, this isn't a partnership, it's an integration. And that's what we need, because a native integration simplifies a workflow. And simplification of a workflow is what we're eventually after, to be able to drive that efficiency and scale. So yes, the answer is, regardless of if you're in broadcast or in enterprise, that native integration around such capabilities is something that's being asked for.
Okay. Robin, you talked about the Creator Lab that you got in Central. I think you told me it's about 150% increase in the number of creators.
I checked this morning. It's 105% increase in the number of attendees at NAB that designate themselves as content.
So self-identify as a creator.
So yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it is. And for many of us, we'll think of kind of creators and we'll think of YouTubers and TikTokers and so on. And, we all know there's a lot of very high quality content out there on those platforms, as well as some less high quality content. But most of what I think of when I think about that world would be like pre-recorded content. It would be, either documentaries or it would be sort of individual vloggers and that kind of thing. Where does this live or, multi-contributor content start to come into that creator world?
Yeah, so it's still evolving. I mean, certainly in enterprise, and I'm going to go back to the points that Andy and Rowan made. Every company is now a media company. And if you look at who built the biggest studios last year, look at Dick's Sporting Goods, look at Walmart, look at Target, and the amount of content they have. And if you look at the creator space, I would say at this moment in time, they're using live to grow their audiences and their loyalty and develop their audiences. So we spoke to a journalist this morning who has a big YouTube following, but once a week he does his office hours on Zoom. People can come in and talk to him. And we're seeing that whether you're in the interior decorating business or whether you've got a flower shop, you're seeing people using conferencing to grow their audiences. And I think that's the point we're at now. Now, we will mature, I think, out of that as well.
The other content type I can't help wondering about is video podcasts. This is something that we've all seen grow hugely, right? Is that an area where these kind of tools are coming into play a lot?
Totally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean, to your point earlier about how they're being used to grow the audience, what we're seeing on our side is these live experience. Why do we do it live, right? We do it so that we can have a real-time conversation with people and engage the audience, right? Otherwise, you would just record it and you'd put it up and you'd watch it at 2 times speed later, right? And you'd have, but why are we asking for that premium time economy for you to be there? It's so that we can have a two-way conversation and shape the content appropriately. So we're seeing tools coming online that are completely built around the interaction model, completely built around the viewer experience. And the live component of that conversation allows it to evolve in real time with the audience feedback as they're engaging in the discussion. So we see like a multi-tiered approach where there are some content creators who have like that, like Robin was saying earlier, that premium experience where you can come and have the live conversation. And why do you do that? Because you want to talk to the host. You're building this relationship with the talent, and now you're able to express that and have something live there. And the tools are allowing us to put the production value on top of the live experience that's there.
Yeah, and I'd add to that in addition to the reach, which you have, and the engagement, which you talked about, you also have the knowing your audience. And I don't know who any of you are or where you came from or what you're doing here, but I know a ton about my conference audience, and I can judge their sentiment. I can tweak the content for next time. And, it's a feedback loop that works really well. And we're just starting to get good at it. And thanks to, data analytics tools.
And just on that one point, right? Because I was with a large financial services organization this morning, and they gave me an amazing stat, which is when they release a product between non-live and live content, if they launch a product in collaboration with a series of live content during the launch,
yep,
it reduces the time to value of the product from 18 months to 4, which actually he spoke to the effect of the engagement, but the trust and confidence viewers have when engaged in live conversation in a hybrid virtual format, which I think was fascinating for enterprises to start looking at.
Very, very interesting. So I want to just dive a little bit into the actual tool sets and how this is working practically. Andy, I mean, you talked about these 3 different kind of categories of user, and they must have quite different needs. I'm interested by the extent to which you see, your technology as a capability integrating into a broader workflow, putting the Zoom transport into a Viz product or, an NDI output that goes into a switcher versus the extent to which people are looking to have essentially a production suite within Zoom itself. I imagine that must be a quite competing set of priorities.
Well, I think what's interesting about it is that if you distill from the problem that they have to the root cause, it's all the same. Like the broadcasters, the enterprise media producers, and the content creators, when it comes to the integration of remote video, have the same need. They have a signal over here and they want to bring it over here and they want to make it really easy to use. At the broadcaster, what we're starting to see is this revolution around cloud workflows and distributed and remote production, right? Where we have different people from all over the world. This person's going to shade my cameras. This person's going to mix the audio, and they're going to do it in a cloud-defined platform that isn't associated with a single central hub. You adapt that then in enterprise and you look at the studio story, right? How do I walk into this space and it's suddenly operable and adaptable to whatever type of content is coming out of here? Maybe at 3:00, it's an all hands. At 4:00, it's an internal meeting. At 5:00, it's a one-on-one, right? And how do we make that space adaptable in these conference rooms, whether it's divisible spaces or corporate production studios? How do they do that? And then for the content creator, a lot of the time they're the talent and the operator, right? So they're sitting in front of their software tool and they need to be able to bring in the remote guest and switch between different scenes, but do that as part of the art of having the conversation. So maybe it's breaking it out to a stream deck to have simple peripherals, to control that. That's just an analog of the same thing we were talking about before with having the, abstracted bespoke interface for the operators, right? So these are the same needs, but they're just expressed via different budgets and different workflows and different staffing abilities, right? But they all boil down to the same fundamentals of what needs to happen.
And Rohit, how do you see this? Are you more thinking about integrating, tools like Zoom into your product set, or integrating your capabilities into platforms like Zoom?
I think it's about just delivering the outcome. So we don't necessarily think about it one way or the other, right? I mean, we focus on ensuring that the Viz platform is an open platform, which allows for integration into any capability that is required to deliver the outcome. And, if you take the product that we released earlier this year, it was Viz capability integrated into the Zoom platform because that was the channel in which the end consumer, the end user, was most likely to be able to consume that capability, which was an immersive meeting room experience. And you've got Zoom rooms everywhere. There is absolutely no reason for us to then integrate Zoom into that and then drive that through a native Viz capability. But the vice versa is true when it comes to remote contribution for broadcasters, where we would integrate Zoom into our workflows delivered through the Viz capability. So I think it is extremely dependent on the end user outcome in terms of where is the end user most easily going to consume that end workflow.
Well, and what's going to be the simplest interaction method for that user, right?
Absolutely, because simplification is key. And what actually we are learning is, as you do that in the enterprise broadcast convergence space, that simplicity that we are building for, which is a end user who's an an enterprise IT user, an operator who's probably not even an enterprise IT user, but a end compute user, driving that upstream into broadcast is driving the simplification of more complicated user experience, which was typically the case.
Yeah, we talked about this a little on the prep call. It's in the broadcast world, it's kind of job obsolescence that they worry about. They kind of like complexity, whereas the enterprise has a different set of needs, and the content creators just want it to be seamless. And I think Zoom in particular has done a good job of listening. Like, why can't we have a green room, like where people could go so that we're not just bringing somebody onto the screen? Yeah. That beauty filter, it doesn't quite work as well as I'd like, but it's getting better. So, and the AI features that say, yeah, your lighting is really bad. We're taking the complexity out of it so that operators without a full staff of people, I think we talked on the prep call about the Olympics and the one-man shows that went to go film them. It's really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll just sort of fill in on that a little bit. I'm pretty sure it's public knowledge. The major Swedish broadcaster, did, a huge software-defined, coverage set up for the Winter Olympics, this year. What I found really fascinating chatting to their CTO about was the fact that they then put these sort of simplified software tools in the hands of anybody who wanted to have a go at mixing a live broadcast of a sport from the Olympics. Anybody in their company could have a go. And guess what? It was all people who were not traditional video operators, audio operators, and so on. It was people from, corporate functions and all of that kind of thing that came and tried to use this. This kind of simplicity, I think, is a real key to all of this. Robin, you touched on AI there. It's 2026. We have to talk about AI. But what do you think is the impact in this kind of space? Do you think that it's going to be very significant in helping some of these creators or enterprises to create more broadcast quality content? And what does broadcast quality even mean?
Well, certainly on the content creation, there's no doubt it's already very much used in helping. I think, if you would have asked me 4 months ago with AI slop and Sora, we're seeing that model may need to be rethought before AI is actually creating things. But you are seeing newscasters who are avatar-driven newscasters. But I think for the most part, right at this moment, people are hungry for authenticity and human creation. And the tools that will help in the AI world are those assistants to bring in a transition, to make a great title, to ideate on something. But on the back end, to look at personalizing. I do believe we're going to enter into an area of highly personalized content. If you go down to the stock market, go down to the New York Stock Exchange, you'll see the TV there is broadcasting different feeds to Ireland than New York because they care about different things. And eventually that will trickle down to the broadcast of me, and they know what I'm interested in, for better or worse. And I think that we're just starting to enter. We talked about this, video as a data type. That why should I watch the whole training movie? I just want to know how to put this gasket into something, so get me to the part. You know me, you know what I do it.
Yeah. Right. How do you find the different kind of constituents of your customer base are approaching this? Are some more forward thinking than others?
Well, we spoke about this when I come from a non-broadcast background, and coming into the industry, I was quite surprised by the uptake of certain capabilities, cloud being one as an example. And clearly there were constraints, technical constraints, monetary constraints, financial constraints around cloud uptake. I think the reaction to AI has transformed substantially over the last several weeks, I'd argue, as opposed to just months. And that's probably came out after the Anthropic Cloud Code release. What is fascinating is there are multiple layers of, I'll call it, acceptance of how AI is going to fundamentally alter the way production is carried out, and how that alters the way viewers will expect engagement in this era. You've got one layer which looks at AI simply as an assistive technology to just, make the boat go a little bit faster. And the other set who understand its transformative ability, if you were to actually weave in AI into the core workflow and alter the workflows, reimagine those workflows that are producing content in an age of AI. What would that mean in terms of efficiencies? What would that mean in terms of capabilities, scale, and cost? Now, the answers are not going to be great for all of the constituents involved, but the reality is it's going to drive the kind of business outcome that is required by broadcasters and enterprises. And that's what we're doing in terms of absolutely relooking the entire set of products and building in AI, not bolting on AI into the product set.
And you look at workflow also, right? I mean, I used to be the editor of PC Magazine when we ran floppy disks around the office. And then we bought a LAN. We bought a Novell LAN. It sat in the closet for 6 months and then said, we have just got to do this. We got to unpackage this thing. And then I realized you need a whole new workflow. Like, how is the graphic guy going to know that the copy editor touched this? And I think AI tools are at that same point. Everybody's experimented now, but implementation takes a workflow, look at everything.
Andy, how does it fit into your world?
Yeah, I mean, I think the risk a lot of the time on these conversations is that they're high level and theoretical. I'll give you a couple of concrete features that I know are making a difference for some producers that we work with. One is transcription's finally good. Thank God. We're able in real time, we're able to have a very accurate transcription of the conversation, but we can also do translation on top of that, which is also getting very strong right now. So as we're sending the message out, we're able to hear it, and deliver it to people who don't speak the same language. We can even have conversations now. I did a recent demo of this, which blew my mind, where we have people who don't speak the same language sitting on a panel together, delivering a conversation, and they are fully aware of what the other person is saying. The translation has gotten that good. So that's super exciting to me because those conversations couldn't happen before. So that's one concrete benefit. Another one I think is content repurposing. So now that we have those assets and we have that organized metadata that's sitting on top of the media, we are now able to retrieve it very quickly when we're going into the edit, or we're able to automatically generate, short form content out of a long form live event to build the content lifecycle automatically without sitting there and editing every, single portion of that. And finally, I'd say for Zoom customers, especially, the bedrock of all of this is trust. And that is the thing that I think is the biggest risk that we have to mitigate when we think about being vendors that are providing AI tools. Yes, the quality is important, but the trust layer on top of that. So some of the things that we've been doing around our MCPs, the recent World ID announcement that we had for human verification on Zoom calls, these are things that have to be the foundation in order to get the adoption. And the enterprise especially is very sensitive to this. So it's really making sure that they have the controls that they need to be able to monitor the utilization, make sure they're multiplying where the impact is available, and giving rooms for, experimentation and workflow on top of that.
Well, I like the specificity there. I agree. It's very easy to get caught in high level kind of conversations about this. So, Rohit, I'm going to throw this at you as well. Can you give us some specifics on kind of where you're actually applying AI within the toolset within the business?
Absolutely. I mean, let's start with the graphics creation workflow, right? How do you effectively start taking out the rote work around graphics creation at scale, from lower thirds through to whatever else you need to then have an agentic workflow around graphics. That's something we do today. Another example is AI keying. AI keying has been a thing for a while, but the level to which we now can get green screen less capability, it's something we've got in our show floor at the North Hall, is substantially higher. And having an entirely software defined AI keyer, which allows you to have green screen like capability without the green screen, without the hardware, which is broadcast grade, but could be applied to an enterprise and, to a creator level, completely democratizes access to that kind of technology to drive that kind of content creation at scale.
Well, and then you're bringing that into that kind of full software workflow, the much simpler workflow that we're talking about. Robin, I want to bring this kind of to the opposite extreme, back to the people. We're talking about these simpler tools. We're talking about making it easy and having operators who can be, presenting and operating all at the same time. Is there a risk that some of this lulls us into a false sense of security? I mean, my excellent colleague David, who's at the back, is writing about this topic to come out of the show. And one of the things he found in talking to a lot of users was they were reinforcing that while the technology is great, we mustn't forget about the need to plan and rehearse. And, content creation is still a complex thing, right?
Yeah, and infrastructure. So you're seeing places like we're here in Vegas. So if you go out to Wari Studios, you can rent a studio where you have 100-person audience, but 1 million Zoom screens out to the world. In New York, there's Convene. There's the Lighthouse in Brooklyn. So you're seeing these collab production spaces that if you have a high stakes production, you now have an alternative besides sitting there. Do I wish personally there were I do a monthly high stakes Zoom meeting. And do I wish that Zoom didn't kind of change the menus every month? And do I wish that there was when I rehearse, I call my staff. I go, I know it's 10 at night, but could you all just jump on this call?
Right.
Imagine if you had AI doing that. Just saying, Andy, like if you had a bunch of fake people I could put in there and say, does this work? If you could say to me, you're backlit. If, there are things that will get even simpler, I think. Mm. And I think that will, I'm looking forward to that day.
Yeah, and then for us, that's our RTMS stack, where we recognize that there's all these downstream consumers that want to work with this content in real time. So we made our real time media streams available to AI models that they could look at that in an authorized environment, again, keeping the circle of trust. They can analyze that content and make those recommendations about, okay, your lighting's off, or you need to, you're not framed properly, or whatever those things are. We're now building out the integrations that allow the developers of different vertical industries, and healthcare has their own version of this, and there's a lot of those that come to play with RTMS.
Okay, we're almost out of time. What I want to know is, if we got all these different constituents, the enterprises, the creators, the broadcasters, it feels like we're all learning off each other at this moment in time. So maybe I'll ask you first, Andy, if there is one thing that broadcast users should learn from the enterprise, from creators, but that they're not doing yet, what is it?
I think I'll leave you with this. I think it's in enterprise, there has traditionally been a conflict between the enterprise IT team and the AV team that's trying to produce these high quality results, right? And what we've done, and what I'm seeing over the past couple of years, is this opportunity to sit in the middle there, and that's what we're trying to do at Zoom, and have the enterprise controls that exist and IT teams expect, but deliver the NDI streams, deliver the isolated audio, deliver the baseband SDI to the AV team, so that the IT manager gets their managed endpoint, it's in their circle of trust, the content is controlled there, but then the AV team can build their portion off of that. And I think as we start to build those internal bridges in these organizations, that opens the opportunity, that opens up the conversation to remove that IT management friction and actually get these parts of the enterprise working together.
Robin, what about for you? What do you think we need to learn that we're not yet learning?
Well, I think certainly content has to be available in every format, but it's going to take this moment in time. So last month in Dubai alone, 100 live events were canceled. It's geopolitics. And that is going to, in the future, whether it's floods, whether it's wars, whatever it is, we are going to have to understand multiple streams of getting our information out to people, and in as many ways as possible. And so I think it's really important to start to experiment with these mixed media, the hybrid events.
Yep. And Rohit, I mean, you talked about the surprises that you had when you came into the media industry. So now you're an old hand at the media industry. What have you learned? What do you think that we all need to learn from this kind of convergence that's going on?
I think there are three things, right? And it's a virtuous cycle. And the three things are: first is embrace simplicity. Embrace the simplicity that you have in enterprise, and what that simplicity, the sophistication that is, that the simplicity hides. That's the first. The second is embrace the fact that unless you change the underlying process, you will not get the overarching benefit, and be open to the change. Be open to the fact that the last 10 years of how things were happening would have to be broken and reshaped to get the disproportionate benefits you get from implementing it. And the third is pace. Do what you can in 3 months and do not wait for the next 3 years. The pace at which we can drive transformation, it's something I think we can absolutely learn from the enterprise world.
Good stuff. Well, talking of pace, we've reached the end of our slot. So thank you very much to you all. Fascinating conversation. Really appreciate your insights.